Fairy tales aren't just bedtime stories. They're some of the oldest and most enduring narratives in human history. Long before books and films, these tales were spoken aloud, passed down from generation to generation as warnings, as lessons, and as dreams of wonder. They live at the intersection between fantasy and reality, where the mundane world slips into something enchanted, where the unknown is explained through the magical, and the impossible feels just close enough to touch. Fairy tales are such an important part of the global storytelling canon, and they appear in every art form, and film is no exception. Historical fairy tales are some of humanity's oldest surviving narratives. Born from oral traditions long before they were written down, rooted in folklore, myth, and communal storytelling, they carry lessons about morality, survival, and the dangers of the unknown. These are what most people think of when the topic of fairy tales comes up, and for good reason. They have been time-tested and popularized from centuries of cultural dissemination. There's medieval miracles in The Virgin Spring, classical myth in The Adventures of Prince Achmed, and The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and Arthurian legend in The Green Knight. But these are most commonly known in classic Disney films like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and The Little Mermaid. However, there are also differing interpretations of these same stories, like in my first film, La Belle et la Bête.
Tout ce que je possède, je le possède par magie. Mais dans ce pavillon se trouvent mes richesses véritables.
La Belle et la Bête remains one of the most enchanting fairy tale films ever made, transforming the well-known story into a dreamlike fable. At its heart, it retains the archetypical structure of the fairy tale. Beauty, a selfless daughter, enters a realm of danger and enchantment, where a terrifying beast gradually reveals his inner humanity. Jean Cocteau's cinematic style serves the film's subject matter perfectly. His use of slow motion, gliding camera work, and surreal set pieces make the beast's castle feel alive. Arms holding candelabras, curtains billowing like breath, evoking the sense of a world governed by magic rather than traditional logic. Every image suggests that we have crossed into an unknown space, halfway between waking and dreaming. The film thrives on contrasts. Darkness and light, fear and tenderness, monstrosity and beauty. Like traditional fairy tales, it blends wonder with unease, reminding us that transformation comes through suffering and compassion. La Belle et la Bête is not merely an adaptation of a story, but a cinematic fairy tale in its own right, one that continues to shimmer with mystery and magic 8 decades later. Moving from concrete and well-established fairy tales, there is an entire world of tradition and myth that doesn't form into clean-cut narratives. This is the realm of folklore. It's in the Czech New Wave with Valerie and her Week of Wonders, and a German expression with the Die Nibelungen films. Norse myth in the Northman, and Estonian magic in November. Kirikou and the Sorceress sets its sights on West Africa, and Onibaba on Japan. Son of the White Mare is a brilliant animated film drawing upon Hungarian mythology and nomadic folklore, but it's in 9th century Ireland that I want to turn to with The Secret of Kells.
Is this your pet? Ooh. Ah! Well.
The Secret of Kells is less a historical account of the famous manuscript, the Book of Kells, and more a mythological representation of what that book represents in Irish culture and history. Follows a young boy obsessed with stories of magic and the creation of illuminated manuscripts, who must venture outside his secluded abbey to help with the creation of the Book of Kells. The film's visual style deepens the story's mythological origins. In fact, I made an entire video about it. Its illuminated storybook imagery transforms history into legend, every frame echoing the art of the manuscript itself. Shadows and stylization turn the Vikings into inhuman forces, much like how fairy tales transform real dangers into symbols of chaos and fear. What makes the film resonate is its blend of darkness and wonder. The forest holds both peril and beauty. Imagination proves as essential as bravery. But not all fairy tales need to take place in the past, or at least not in villages and other small communities. Sometimes fairy tales leave the forest and take to the streets in urban fairy tales. These include modern stories like Weathering with You and Kiki's Delivery Service. They can be dark in Let the Right One In, or comedic like Celine and Julie Go Boating, or darkly comedic like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Some of the best of them use their urban environments to add layers to their stories, and no film does that better, in my opinion, than Boy and the World. Ali Abreu's Boy in the World is a rare kind of animated fairy tale, one that moves from enchanted forests and mythic kingdoms into a modern landscape of cities, machines, and rapid globalization. Told entirely without dialogue, the film follows a small boy who leaves his rural home in search of his father and wanders into a vast and overwhelming world. What he finds is not magic in the traditional sense, but the strangeness and wonder of factories, parades, skyscrapers, and crowded streets, all rendered in dazzling hand-drawn textures and colors that make the ordinary feel otherworldly. Like many fairy tales, the story is simple on the surface, but it's layered with allegory. The boy's perspective transforms trains, protests, and advertisements into dreamlike spectacles, blurring the line between the boy's innocence and the harsh reality of the world around him. The film's surreal imagery, flocks of birds merging into machines, music being represented as orbs of different colors, convey both the beauty and cruelty of modern life, showing how fairy tales can emerge even from industrial noise and urban squalor. What makes Boy in the World such a striking urban fairy tale is its ability to universalize childhood wonder and fear. The boy's wide eyes see the city not as a place of alienation, but also as a place of endless possibility, where hope can still glimmer in the face of overwhelming forces. By presenting the modern world through a child's gaze, Abreu creates a story that is both contemporary and timeless. A fairy tale born not from magic forests, but from the humming, glowing, ever-changing world we find ourselves in. But why do fairy tales even have to take place in our world? Sometimes magic doesn't come to us as much as we come to it. These are otherworld stories, where characters stumble into the mystical. This is classically Alice in Wonderland. It's the otherworld of Coraline, or the afterlife of Testament of Orpheus. It's the hilarity of Dave Made a Maze. It's even in TV form with Over the Garden Wall. It's Spirited Away and The Boy and the Heron, but it's never been better or darker than Pan's Labyrinth.
¿Sois vos? ¿Sois vos? Habéis regresado. No os asustéis, os lo ruego. Mirad, mirad.
Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth is perhaps the quintessential otherworld fairy tale. One where magic is not a gift to our reality, but a realm we must journey into at great cost. Set in the brutal Spanish Civil War, the film follows Ophelia, a young girl who discovers a hidden labyrinth and meets a faun, who tells her that she may be the reincarnated princess of a magical kingdom. Her tasks, however, are not simple wonders. They are terrifying trials filled with monsters, both fantastical and human. What makes Pan's Labyrinth so devastating is how it weaves together the stark violence of history with the dark allure of fantasy. Feli's fascist stepfather, Captain Vidal, is more monstrous than any of the pale, flesh-eating creatures Ophelia encounters underground, reminding us that fairy tales often give shape to the real horrors of the world. At the same time, Del Toro's rich visual imagination, the ancient faun, the grotesque pale man, everything provides a haunting world that exists in parallel to the cruelty of reality. A space where the possibility of resistance and escape can flicker, but can never truly catch fire. What are fairy tales? They are stories we told, and still do tell. They're often judged as childish, but they are anything but childish. They only mask their commentaries on reality in a veil of the fantastical. Inside of every fairy tale, there is the cultural, historical, and personal history of those telling it. There are also incredible devices for conveying abstract and illogical ideas. The last films I want to talk about are nested stories, stories within stories, stories that understand the importance of fairy tales and those who tell them. Movies like The Princess Bride, filled with love and bravery, the wonderful story of Henry Sugar telling the story of greed and charity, The Wolf House framing its story as a truly terrifying traumatic memory. But there can be no rival, no film that better understands why fairy tales matter than Tarsem Singh's The Fall.
Well, first of all, he didn't have a horse, because his horse was killed in a battle. And he wasn't in the middle of any old buildings. He was lost in the middle of a vast desert full of orange sand, with only a handful of men. But they didn't have any water.
The Fall is a breathtaking example of a nested fairy tale. A story within a story that blends imagination, grief, and the transformative power of storytelling. Set in a hospital in 1920s Los Angeles, the film follows Alexandria, a young girl recovering from a fall, and Roy, a stuntman with a broken body and a broken heart. Roy and Alexandria become friends, and he begins to spin a story for her. But as his mental state worsens, the story begins to worsen with it. The narrative operates on several levels. On one level, it is Alexandria's journey of understanding, courage, and agency as she navigates both her recovery and Roy's recovery. On another, it is an epic adventure itself, a richly detailed, visually stunning world of deserts, jungles, and castles, populated by colorful characters who mirror the people and emotions of Alexandria and Roy's real lives. Every frame feels meticulously composed, like a moving painting, reinforcing the idea that stories themselves are acts of creation and transformation. The Fall embodies what makes fairy tales enduring, the power to teach, to console, and to connect. In the fairy tale is a piece of both Roy and Alexandria's spirits, and it is through this tale that both of them grow. The nested structure emphasizes the importance of the storyteller, showing that the magic of a tale comes not only from what is told, but from who tells it and how, and the importance of the story taker, the person listening, suggesting that the meaning of the story is greatly influenced and created by those who listen. Heartbreakingly beautiful and endlessly imaginative, The Fall proves that fairy tales are more than stories. They are lifelines,